to discuss Pakistan inside 30 minutes, and I'm hoping to take a few of your questions as well. You know, often people ask me, who's a good Pakistan expert in India? And I'm always stumped because while we have so many people who dwell on the relationship, who talk about India and Pakistan, it's always more difficult to find people who actually just study Pakistan and what's going on over there. So I'm very grateful that I'm joined by 4 gentlemen, all of whom have seen it very up close in terms of the challenges that Pakistan faces today, and each of them is coming to it from a different end. Our 3 authors, of course, I'll start from there. Mr. Ahmed Rashid completed his trilogy from Taliban and then Descent into Chaos, and then Pakistan on the Brink. We're going to try and end this by asking the question, Pakistan on the brink of what? Because that's the most common phrase one hears about the country. Khurshid Mahmud Kasuri, thanks so much for joining us, the former Foreign Minister of Pakistan. He really was in the thick of the possibility of an India-Pakistan agreement, particularly a Kashmir resolution in the years of 2002 to 2007 in particular. His book comes out next month. So what you're getting is a real sneak preview at what he was able to see at that time. And I think that just the glimmer of hope that there was a possibility of a resolution there should give us a lot of pointers to how to go in the future. Anatol, Lieven wrote The Hard Country about Pakistan, and it's really a book that has been talked about much more, I think, in India than it has in Pakistan in many ways, and we will come to that as well. I'd just like to start with you, Mr. Rashid.
Suhasini, you haven't introduced the Indian, unless you forgot me.
G. Parthasarathy is, of course, needs no introduction. He's our diplomat. He's going to he's going to join us for the discussion that follows this. If I could start with you, Mr. Rashid, your latest in the trilogy really dwells on your ideas of what was going to happen in the year 2014. The book came out in 2013. I know you were right on a lot of things. Did it really pan out as you had hoped and feared, really?
Well, I think the events of 2013 and 14 really panned out, and I think, you know, both countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, have been through huge crises. In Afghanistan, we've had an election that was really disputed and in many aspects failed. We've then had, you know, we spent the whole of last year making the new government, the new president, Ashraf Ghani, took over 3 months to form a cabinet. And of course, at that same time, we had a massive Taliban offensive going on. But I think the very big difference now is, and where I hope that we could step back from the brink as far as Afghanistan is concerned, is that relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan have suddenly very dramatically improved. And the chances now of Afghanistan actually entering into a dialogue with the Afghan Taliban has become very strong. And I think it's going to be up to the Pakistan military to really push this forward, because most of the Taliban leadership is living in Pakistan, and the Afghans now want to talk to them. The Pakistan military has to push them into has to push the Taliban into a dialogue with Kabul. The same situation existed in Pakistan. We have been living under this reign of terror for years and years, but the last 1 year it had really picked up very badly. And there was a huge split in the government and the administration between Nawaz Sharif, who wanted to talk to the extremists and spent months wasting everybody's time by trying to talk to them, and of course nothing happened. And the military, which actually seems to have gone through a rethink of its whole strategy and the kind of sponsorship of extremism that the military has been doing for the last 40 years, basically. They seem to have gone through a rethink, and they wanted to go into, especially into the tribal areas bordering Afghanistan. Now, the military launched an offensive last June. It's been slow and methodical, and it seems to have been, so far as we know, seems to have been successful. But then we've had a continuation of these horrible bombings, culminating, of course, in the December 16th bombing of the Peshawar school, where 150 children aged 6 to 17 were slaughtered by these terrorists. And that really has galvanized the political parties, the government, the military, and they're more or less on one platform now, demanding action against extremism. And they have established a long-term plan which is not just dealing with the military aspects of terrorism, but with education, the madrasas and other such things. Now, what obviously all of you are interested in is what is going to happen to Lashkar-e-Taiba and Lashkar-e-Jangvi and the groups that operate out of Punjab and that have traditionally operated in Indian Kashmir and India itself. Now, the promise is that the issue of these groups will be addressed, perhaps differently, because in my opinion, what is needed a lot more in Punjab is not so much military action, but serious de-radicalization. And that is possible through education and jobs and changing curricula, and obviously a lot of police action and arrests and,
right.
and some of people who you know, are not acceptable.
You know, I do want to cut in because you've used the word rethink at least 3 times, yet you will find skeptics in our audience and other places about this idea of a rethink despite the Peshawar massacre inside Pakistan. And you spoke about the Lashkar-e-Toiba. There's the head of the Jamaat-ud-Dawa who founded the Lashkar-e-Toiba holding a public rally in Karachi this Sunday. So how far does this rethink go? And I want to add to that, when you say that there's a new situation in Afghanistan, the Afghan government and the Pakistani government are closer than ever before, in a sense. The question arises, isn't this really just another 1996? The US is in retreat. Pakistan and Afghanistan are coming closer together, and the Taliban is on the rise.
Well, no, I think as far as the Taliban are concerned, the Pakistani Taliban threat to Pakistan now is so acute and severe that I think there's a realization in the military, the ISI, or the institutions of state that something has to be done, something has changed. We can't keep sponsoring this war in Afghanistan because it is destroying Pakistan itself. So that's the first thing. Sorry, your first?
My first question was really the Hafiz Saeed rally just on Sunday.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you know, first of all, relations with India right now are very bad. India is not talking to Pakistan, which, by the way, I think is a really stupid thing to do. I think India should talk to Pakistan no matter what happens, even if there's, God forbid, a state of conflict or skirmishing or whatever. But a dialogue between the two countries is what, I mean, Putin is talking to Obama right now. I mean, you know, and we can give hundreds of instances like dialogue is definitely needed. Now, you use the word skeptic. Look, a lot of Pakistanis are skeptical. I'm skeptical still. And in John Kerry's words, you know, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I'll only believe this turnaround when I see it on the ground. Now, I'm seeing it on one border to one extent. Improvement of relations with Afghanistan, there's been less skirmishes on the Afghan border, etc., etc. And they're catching our terrorists, we are catching their terrorists. Why can't this be duplicated? When will this be duplicated with India? You know, that we catch your terrorists, you catch our terrorists, you know,
sure.
And that there's a real exchange of intelligence and sharing and all the rest of it. Now, the military is certainly promising that this will happen over time. But I think it's a much more difficult situation, not least because, you know, we have been wedded to the idea of India as the enemy, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I want to bring Anatol in there because Anatol has really studied the Pakistani army. In fact, he's not going to like this story. But a few years ago, I had dinner hosted by a senior official of the Pakistani army. And as I was leaving, he said, I want you to have this book as a present. And I expected it to be a sort of army propaganda manual or you know, something on the glory of the Pakistani army. Instead, he gave me a copy of Anatol's book and said, at least someone gives us the benefit of doubt. And Anatol, really honestly, your book has so many reasons why one should still hope that the Indian and the Pakistani military can move together, but more importantly, to what Ahmed just referred to, that you're seeing a change on the western border. Do you think that can actually move to the border with India as far as the Pakistani military goes, given the inherent, if you like, indoctrinated hate for India there is?
Well, I mean, I think that what one will see, I certainly hope, is what one has seen since Mumbai and to some extent all the way since 2002, which is that Lashkar-e-Taiba will no longer be, and other groups, encourage and help to attack India directly. I think it is recognized now the immense danger of this, and also the fact that, of course, it brings pressure from the United States in a way that was not true in the 1990s. So I think that degree of restraint will continue.
Is that really true? Because all we see is that it changes from the Lashkar-e-Taiba to the Jamaat-ud-Dawa and now to the Falah-e-Insaniyat Forum. It doesn't actually change in the action on the group.
Well, I mean, it changes in the sense that there haven't been more Mumbais, obviously. I mean, think how different it would have been if, in fact, the campaign of the 1990s had been continued. So I think there one will see restraint. I hope that in future it will develop into what Ahmed has talked about, which is a completely new policy. I think in the shorter term, as Ahmed has said, where one can actually see change is in the policy towards Afghanistan. I mean, a genuine attempt, recognized by Ashraf Ghani, by the way, and his administration, to reach out to at least that section of the Kabul government. Of course, one of the problems in Afghanistan now is that you essentially have two governments. And I think that does reflect, as Ahmed has said, a new attitude towards domestic militancy in Pakistan as the greatest threat. Now, that doesn't mean that fear of India has gone away, of course, as I'm sure Mr. Kasuri will, but it does mean that look, given what has happened, given more than 4,000 military deaths at the hands of the Pakistani Taliban, given the latest slaughter, after all, of the children of the military in this school, it's entirely reasonable to think that this will produce a certain change of heart in the Pakistani military, and that when both Kayani and General Sharif say that they now think of domestic rebellion as the biggest threat, that they are telling the truth. That in turn, I think, has led to by no means a complete change of heart with regard to Afghanistan, but nonetheless a significant one, which, by the way, is not something which happened in the last few weeks. It's been building up for a number of years now, which is that the Pakistani establishment is not pursuing the agenda of the 1990s anymore, which is to say towards complete Taliban victory and a Pakistani client state. Partly, of course, that didn't work even before 9/11. It had already been seen to fail, partly because the Afghan Taliban actually loathed Pakistan, but also because a Taliban-ruled Afghanistan would now be seen as a real threat of supporting and potentially supporting an increasing
You would say that's the
militancy.
understanding inside Pakistan,
Yeah.
that a Taliban-ruled Afghanistan is not in their interest.
No, but they do, what I believe, under your correction, sir, is still the policy is that Afghanistan, and by the way, I mean, this is, as we saw from the management of the elections in Afghanistan last year, this is widely seen in Afghanistan itself and by many Western analysts, that it is necessary that the government in Kabul should be Pashtun-led. Not exclusively Pashtun, but Pashtun-led. Of course, that it should not allow Afghanistan to be used as a base for anti-Pakistani activities.
And it will stay over there.
And finally, the Pakistani establishment does continue to believe that there has to be a settlement with the Taliban, not leading to Taliban government in Afghanistan, but that if there is to be peace, the Taliban have to have some kind of share of power, given the extent of their support in the Pashtun areas. So that I see as the new strategy. And like Ahmed, I think that it is very, very desirable, concerning Afghanistan at least, that India and Pakistan should resume talks, because I don't think that the basic positions anymore are necessarily as far apart as many analysts
In fact,
still
a lot
believe.
of what we are hearing in the last few weeks leads us to believe that they may actually be coming towards that. Kasuri, I have to come to you. His book is called Neither a Hawk Nor a Dove. I'll let him tell you why that's the name of the book. But we are at a situation where India and Pakistan, at least for the good part of the last year, have not actually had any formal talks. Your book actually talks about not only talks between the two countries, but the possibility of a resolution. Is that just sort of a glimmer of hope, or was there more than that?
No, it's much more than a glimmer, because it's not simply even my wife, who's present here, accuses me of being an eternal optimist. So I say to her and to many others who'd care to listen, that when you're dealing with Pakistan-India relations, unless you have huge doses of optimism, you just will not be able to progress further.
Almost Alice in Wonderland. You have
No, not Alice in Wonderland, not at all. And that's why I've written the book. Now, if you ask me the question, why the name of the book? I come from a very different background. I've been to prison under Ziaul Haq, under Bhutto, my grandfather and father, everybody. Musharraf came from a completely different background. Why I was chosen as the foreign minister, only he'll have to answer when he writes. So the first question he asked me, very first question, and that's the very first line in my book, and peace process had not started. This was General Musharraf of Kargil. So he asked me, Kasuri Saab, what are you in India, a hawk or a dove? I said, Mr. President, you'll find out in due course. It's not that I was trying to hedge, not at all. I have very clear views. I've been involved on Pakistan-India peace process for 25 years before I became foreign minister. I remember Mr. I.K. Gujral, who was a friend of my father, he came from Punjab and used to know my father earlier. When I got involved in the track too, Gujral Saab and I planted a sapling at the India International Center, which I hope will be a huge tree by now, much better than the state of Pakistan-India relations. But hopefully, we'll soon be able to get there. Now, you ask me, is it more than a glimmer? I tell you, why have I written this book? It's very difficult. I'm a constituency politician. I'm not a professor, and nor am I Ahmed, and who can produce books. I won't say by the dozens, but I mean, I'm always surprised, and since I'm finding it so difficult to write a book, and it's about the period, because you need to do a lot of research. I've not even said, I said this, unless New York Times, the Times of India says I actually said it. Otherwise, it's useless saying.
Your faith in the press is much required at this time.
No, no. I want people to know that everything I say is authenticated. It's not simply my optimism, eternal optimism. So what do? I give the entire details, which has never been given by anybody. President Musharraf has luckily not given it, because my book wouldn't have the value that it has. He mentions in one paragraph the 4-point formula. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was the other person who can write, hopefully will not write.
Well, I think one of his aides has written a little bit about 2007,
okay.
Dr. Baru.
Okay. Well, I've read that. And
it's still
that supports what I've said.
That's right.
So Dr. Sanjay Baru, whatever he's written, 100% supports what I'm going to say. And in fact, I won't go into India's domestic politics or Congress Party's domestic internal politics. It's not appropriate for me to do so. But he hints at that. He's made major hints. Everything that he says authenticates what I write in the book, not just on Kashmir, but also on Siachen. So I have given the entire framework. What is more, I've even given the background. Why were we doing what we were doing? Then I used to be told by every Indian I met, Kasuri Saab, you're trying hard, nothing will happen. Pakistan Army won't allow it. So I've devoted an entire chapter on Pakistan Army as I saw it. I am not Shuja Nawaz or Professor Stephen Cohen or Dr. Aisha Siddiqa, who are experts on Pakistan Army. I'm not.
But I understand you've actually got documentary evidence.
I have said, so-and-so said this.
Okay. I'm going to bring in Mr. Parthasarathy at this stage, because in terms of eternal optimist about the India-Pakistan relation, he is not.
He is not. You should maybe sit nearer. The process of osmosis probably would have worked.
But I do want to bring you in. You've heard what the gentlemen here on stage are saying. Not only is there hope, there is a turn, there is a rethink. Your thoughts?
Well, let me start off with two of my Pakistani friends here. Mr. Khurshid Kasuri, I think I've dealt with every Pakistan foreign minister since the 70s. And you, sir, have been the most reasonable and the best of them. Point one.
Thank you very much.
And Mrs. Kasuri is here, a gracious hostess who does a lot by way of running schools in Punjab. So I think we should give her a welcome also. Now, Mr. Kasuri is, Ahmed is of course, to my view of thinking, perhaps the foremost writer on Afghanistan and developments in Afghanistan, and he's done it with great intellectual honesty. Coming back to what Kasuri Saab said, let me not go too far, but to say I was peripherally involved. What he says is the truth. I think both countries have been shy to make public what transpired in that period. And I personally believe that as a democracy, our last government should have done it. Then all strength to your arm. When your book comes out, we'll go into it further. But yes, I think you've done a service by making it written. Because for one simple reason, I went to Pakistan when Kargil was on, And then one fine day, the army and the politicians fought, and I was coming home when I found troops in battle gear climbing the gates of the Pakistan television to take it over. I came back and told Delhi a coup was underway. First time in my life, and hopefully the last, when I'll be present in such a situation. But I must say, in fairness to Mr. Kasuri, at a time when his foreign office, and he was not there, was most negative, he did make it clear to them that they have to talk to the Indian High Commissioner. Now, why did that process proceed? It proceeded on three bases. I think President Musharraf, persuaded by the likes of Mr. Kasuri, gave up the use of terrorism as an instrument of state policy as far as India was concerned. 2003, November, sir, he announced a ceasefire.
I announced.
You announced.
And it lasted for 10 years.
No, it lasted for about 7 years, but
No,
anyway.
2013.
But anyway, the ceasefire he announced, he honestly observed. For a man who was the architect of Kargil, to have taken that step was a big step. Thereafter, there were serious back-channel talks on Jammu and Kashmir. But those talks, and don't forget, for the first time after independence, the line of control was opened out for trade and for movement of people. That is the first step in the way, let's say, that Northern Ireland proceeded. Excellent, and as long as it lasted. But the framework, I think, for different political reasons, which I'm afraid I cannot go into in public, Musharraf had problems. We were having the Indo-US nuclear deal. Various things came in the way. Neither made it public, nor did we take the opposition into confidence. So when Mr. Kasuri reveals, you can get his version of what happened.
I'm going to have to cut you short here because I'm being told.
No, just a minute. Let me finish. Yeah. Things changed after Musharraf left. And I'm answering Ahmed here. When I was on my way to Kabul in 2008, our embassy was attacked by the Haqqani network. Our military attaché was killed. This was followed by Mumbai because the Manmohan Singh government chose to ignore what happened in Kabul. All I'm saying is that you can't have a dialogue when bullets are flying. Nobody hears the sound of the dialogue, everybody hears the sound of the bullet. I would believe that at a certain point in time, we should go back to 2003, the Musharraf ceasefire, the end of infiltration across the line of control, Hafiz Mohammed saying, Saeed being told, Ghar mein baitho, we'll talk. Till then, let the military sort it out so that the bullets don't fly.
All right, well, but some would say that you can't.
You are a moderator, let them speak.
You can't stop the bullets flying until you talk, but Ahmed wanted to respond to you.
Listen, all conflicts, all negotiations have only been successful in the midst of war and in the midst of conflict. And remember that what we're seeing right now in Afghanistan, a huge escalation of fighting by the Taliban, and yet at the same time, there's a huge escalation in back-channel dialogue. The Taliban delegation has just been to China. China wants to become a moderator and a mediator in Afghanistan. So there are huge movements going on internationally and nationally for a dialogue in the midst of the war. I just want to say one thing very quickly, and which nobody has mentioned. A lot of people in Pakistan and Afghanistan believe that the Americans are leaving this region. They are, in the medium term, the Americans are going to be out of here in the next 2 or 3 years. And certainly, the next US president is not going to be interested in Afghanistan or Pakistan, except perhaps as a kind of counter-terrorism activity. And I think that is proving to be a huge wake-up call to the elite, to the political, military, warlord elite in Afghanistan, and to the military elite in Pakistan. That with the Americans out of here, we're really going to be left with no major aid givers, donors, sponsors, supporters, etc. And we need to stand on our own feet, carry out economic reforms, be more democratic, and bring our people together. Okay, and I think that's a very positive thing.
You've given me just the point where I want to end this, but I do want to end it by filling in the blank to the topic of the discussion, Pakistan on the brink of. A year later, if we are back here at the Jaipur Literary Festival, Pakistan is on the brink of what?
Well, I mean, in my book, I stress the resilience of Pakistan, compared to some analysts. And I think, if you look back at the history of the past 6 years, things looked much, much more dangerous in 2008, 2009. Then you had a really powerful Taliban insurgency moving from area to area. It is largely the defeat of that insurgency. It's really been pushed back that has led, to this increased terrorism.
So Anatol says Pakistan is on the brink of something better.
It will trundle on.
I'm slipping on my TV hat here.
What I would like to end on is two things. One is, it's not going to go away. In the long run, of course, nothing can be guaranteed. In my book, I talk about water shortages, though perhaps I shouldn't stress that today. Therefore, it has to be dealt with. But the second thing is, just to say, if the Afghan government can talk to Pakistan and can talk to the Taliban, then India should. But I would just like to add one thing. Of course, as Mr. Parthasarathy has said, a precondition of that is that Pakistan-backed attacks by the Haqqani network on Indian targets in Afghanistan must
Why just
cease.
Haqqani? Why just Haqqani?
Well, sorry, I just mentioned those by way of an example.
Mr. Kasuri, Pakistan and Anatol has put in that Pakistan and India perhaps on the brink of talks as well. Do you think that's true?
I think it will happen, and I explain in the book why. And the most important, I'm only going to hint because my publishers have told me not to make headlines on anything other than the book. It is very simply this, that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and I've devoted 8 pages to that, the publisher sent it back to me, I must tell you the story. I said, no, things will improve. But after this ceasefire and, across the line and everything and hard states on both sides, they said, do you want to change? I said, no, I don't want to change. I'll stick with it because Prime Minister Narendra Modi has come on the basis of Vikas, development. If that is going to remain the agenda, and that must remain Pakistan's agenda, neither country has a choice.
Can afford to. Mr. Rashid, Pakistan on the brink of?
Pakistan on the brink of saving itself. I think that's I think that's the change I would like to see.
And you're going to finish
look,
that
all I'm saying is, I'm a realist. I go by this situation on the ground. And as I said, I have been through the worst of times in a Kargil conflict. I've been the best of times when Mr. Kasuri was at the helm of affairs. One little point on Afghanistan. Then this is what my Afghan friends tell me. Yes, the Pakistan army is cleaning out the Tehrik-e-Taliban. 4 divisions of the Pakistan army are involved. But what has happened to Mr. Haqqani and his crowd who have been attacking us? What has happened to the other Taliban who have been attacking us?
So you would answer that question, Pakistan is on the brink of?
No. I just say I don't want a neighbor to be on the brink.
Okay. That's a good point. Thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause for all our discussants here. And these are 3 books that I hope all of you will get a chance to read. Thanks again.
We'd like to thank Ahmed, Rashid, Khurshid, Mohammed Kasuri, Parthasarathy, Anatol, and Suhasini, Haider. Thank you very much for the wonderful session. They might be available at the book signing counter, which is at the Amazon store. So the next session will be at 12:30, which is the number 44, the library at night, followed by Mujhe Jeene Do, which is going to be between 12:30 to 1:30, which is at Mughal tent. Then we have 46 and 47 at Baitak from 12:30 to 1:30, and 48 and 49 in Darbar Hall from 12:30 to 1:30. So we have a 10 minutes break. Thank you. Also, the full